Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So our next person that we're interviewing is Shayne D. He is a person with lived experience, a long-standing member of the BPD support group, a comedian and musician, and has a passionate story to tell about his experience with the prison system. All right. Well, we'll get going. To begin, would you mind sharing a bit of your story with us and your relationship to BPD?
Yeah, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I
Yeah.
was nervous because I got a microphone. It's way too sensitive. Like, I mean, you can hear a pin drop. I'm like, okay, I gotta use this, and I just didn't know if it was working. Anyway, so hi everybody, I'm Shayne. My experience with BPD, how extensive do you want me to get here?
Tell all story.
Well, basically, I was born, and no, yeah, basically, ever since I was like, as seriously, as long as I can remember being alive, I was really hypersensitive and I was being triggered pretty much on the regular by pretty much every single person in my life, including friends, family. Basically, it was just like I didn't have any education or I didn't have any knowledge as to, what was wrong with me at the time. So it was just, I just didn't know. Basically, it was me just being triggered by pretty much every single person that I got close to. So I kind of grew up, being hurt a lot. And, then there was some abuse issues and, that only added to things. And then I got to an age where I started to retaliate. Like I've never, see, I grew up like my brother, I don't know, I guess people are different, but my brother was the kind of person that could take it, right? And I never was. Like I was always the person that fought back. And I mean, I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I just can't I just can't sit around and just, be hollered at or, physically abused or whatever, right? So I was always the person that lashed out. And then when I got to an age where, you know, I could actually, start doing some damage, I started getting results and I learned um, at a young age, well, not a young age, but I guess adolescent, that if you, you know, I guess you could say hurt people or, fought back, they left you alone. So that's how my brain was wired that, if anyone messed around with me, I would just attack them and then they wouldn't bother me anymore. It just seemed like a pretty simple solution to me, right? And in fact, I was just doing what they were doing to me. So that was how I justified it. But eventually that led, broken homes and whatnot. And basically, I just felt like I was by myself. And then at about in high school, I basically flunked out of high school. And then I started, using drugs. Nothing hardcore. I mean, back when I was a kid, like I'm almost 50, right? So there wasn't like, crystal meth or like, I didn't know anybody that was doing heroin. At least nobody talked about it. It was mostly just people smoking weed and like hash, if anybody remembers what that was. It was pretty good actually. But basically it was just melted down weed. So anyways, yeah, so I started just doing that to cope, right? And to block out all the intrusive thoughts that I had in my mind and all the angry, ruminations that I had about people that I just hadn't forgiven, right? And then, on weekends I would just drink and whatnot. And then at about, I think I was 20 years old. And so, do you want me to get into this, or what do you want me to do?
Yeah, tell it all, Shane. We're in a book here.
All right. So, anyways, yeah. So basically, at 20 years old, like actually, I started dating a girl late in my late teens, and I guess I became really like jealous and possessive because you finally meet someone that actually like likes you, cares about you, and that just opens the door to more problems, right? And so you start going through the whole cycle of in fact, she would be triggering me, and then I would try to push her away, and then the whole cycle of which is the definition of BPD, right? Is the neurotic and then the psychotic, right? Get the hell away from me. And then, oh my God, I'm by myself. I got to do everything I possibly can to get them back. So I got on this like cycle of just push, pull, and I mean, that's pretty much been my life story. But anyways, one night I was out drinking and, some things went down and my friends played a practical joke on me that went wrong. And I ended up killing somebody on the street. And, I ended up getting sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. at 20 years old. And I was, I was basically, I grew up in the country on a farm. I mean, I didn't know anybody that had ever been in prison. So basically I just got thrown into like, a penitentiary, which was brutal. I mean, dealing with people that were like lifelong criminals and, seriously serious people, right? Like hardcore criminals, tough as nails, and yeah, so basically I was kind of scared, obviously. I mean, I was just a kid, right? And I got thrown into the prison system, and which didn't obviously settle anything because I just started harboring more resentment. And so because I was like a first time offender, and they kind of understood the circumstances surrounding what happened, so I actually got out after 4 years, believe it or not. And with like way more problems than what I went in with, right? Because you're not hanging around with people that are like singing kumbaya around a fire. Like these people are like playing on the next score, and they're you're like, I grew up in there. Like I was very immature when I went in there, and so I learned my I became a man in there, and I learned lessons and values that aren't applicable on the street. You can't handle things the way you do in there out here, right? So so I got out here, and I tried to get a job, and but I mean, with my BPD and that on top of it, I was just having nothing but problems, right? And so basically that just drove me back into isolation, and I just basically isolated myself um, from everybody. Like I would just go to work, come home, sit in my apartment, get up the next day, go to work. I mean, that's all I did, right? And to be honest with you, I didn't like it. I didn't like that kind of life. So at like about, then I started, I guess, I mean, I don't really know the scientific evidence on this, but I think that they say that like when you're around in your late 20s, that's kind of like when things really kick into high gear, right? If you have mental health issues. I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's what I've heard. And I've also heard that it starts to taper off in your late 40s. So, I'm waiting for that to happen, right? Because I'm there. You know what I mean? No, it does taper off a bit. Like I heard those girls in the first segment, and I kind of felt bad for them because, they're still, you know, obviously fairly young. And it's just like, I heard the ones say, I heard that, when you get to be like 60, you know what I mean? And they're probably thinking, holy crap, I got to do like 50 years of this. But it does actually the intensity level starts to taper off, like where, you know, like you don't get gripped with that initial rage and that shock that I felt when I was younger, that I would just like, I would like act before I had time to think. And now I might still be that triggered inside, but I have that, 1 or 2 seconds to like think about the consequences before I do anything stupid, right? So there's that. But anyways, so basically this might sound weird to you, but I basically like decided, I don't know, I guess you could call it like committing social suicide, right? I basically just said to myself, you know what? I can't live out here with these people. Like, I'd rather live in there with those people. I mean, they're just as messed up as I am, right? Some of them are even worse. So at least in there, I know I can survive, right? Out here, I was having nothing but problems, relationships, people at work, just crazy stuff. Like, I remember going one time, and, I had a crack on my windshield, and I went to this windshield place, and they were like, they're going to fix it. And then I went back later, and my windshield was still on the ground, and I needed my car the next day. And I got in this huge argument, and like the guy just basically put my windshield back on my car and got duct tape and put it around and just pushed my car outside and said, see you later. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that was happening to me. And I just couldn't function in society, right? I was just having nothing but problems, right? And so basically, yeah, I had some, um, I had a beef with my stepfather, due to the fact of growing up and the way they handle situations, and me specifically and my brother. And I used to hold grudges, right? I used to, if someone hurt me, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I mean, that for me, because I have ADHD too, so it's a perfect storm, right? Like the thoughts, you know cause the emotions, and the emotions cause the thoughts. And like someone would like upset me, and I couldn't get over it for like 3 4 weeks, and if I saw them again, it was even worse. So um yeah, so basically I ruminated about this situation for like 15 years about what happened. And yeah, I did, man. I was just like, and I used to like seriously plan it out in my mind, like, in depth, right? Like revenge fantasies, all kinds of crazy stuff. Like even looking back on it now, I can't believe I wasted that much time doing it. But yeah, so then one day, I just went over there and yeah, I ended up killing someone else. And I know that sounds crazy, but that happened. And this time they were like, yeah, no, we're not, we're not giving you a light sentence there, Shayne. And I got sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 18 years. And let me tell you, that was a sobering reality, you know, to face that because, just to think about how long that is in reality, like, some days I can't even make it through the day. And, these people are saying like 18 to 20 years, maybe you'll get out. And potentially never, because a life sentence is literally a life sentence with the chance of parole after 18 years. So, now you're in this like nut house place with like a bunch of lunatics and you got to somehow like, survive and hopefully not do anything else to anybody in sort of like self-defense or whatever and get more time piled on top of you. Because that was like my worst fear, that someone would attack me and I would have to hurt them or whatever. Or maybe I'd get killed eventually. I don't know. I ended up getting stabbed, and I got attacked a couple times. And then I ended up in segregation. But, like I remember like the turning point for me where things started to come back to reality was they used to have like these mental health interventionists, right, in there. So I was like, I was like a what would you call it? Like a returning client, like on a regular basis. They were coming to see me because there was just one crisis after another. Because when you don't deal with like your underlying issues, it's like you don't have any margin in your life to handle anything, right? Like you literally drop a, you know, you drop a glass of water on the floor and it's just and you're kicking stuff and freaking out. And I mean, that's not normal, right? You got to have a little bit of space to handle some stuff, right? And when you have like a full suitcase, I mean, there's no space. So, literally every little thing was a crisis. So they were coming down all the time to see me. And one time I went to see this lady and she wasn't there. And there was another lady there. And she says, well, I'll talk to you. And she was actually a psychologist. The other people were basically just mental health interventionists, right? I guess. I mean, I don't know really the lingo. I just know that they would come and talk to you and basically just listen to you and try to like, de-escalate the situation. But this was a legit psychologist, right? Like a doctor. And so we're sitting there and she just looks at me and says this. She says, let me ask you a question, Shane. She goes, why are you so angry? And I was like, I don't know. And she says, have you ever been like, sexually abused? And I was just like what? Like why? Why are you asking me that? And like honestly, I don't know why this is kind of like silly actually now in hindsight, but I'd been asked that before by numerous people and I always denied it, right? I guess the shame, or I mean, it has a lot of power over you. And the more you hide it and the more that you don't talk about it, it just gets buried deeper and deeper. And, when someone asks you, you get like overwhelmed with emotions because you have all that unprocessed trauma. So you get gripped and you're like, like, oh, I'm not going to talk about that. And so I was like, no, why? And she goes, oh, because it's written all over your face. I'll never forget that. It was just like, what? Like this lady knew, right? She could see right through me. And it was like really, I don't know. It was like so I basically just said, yeah, I did. And I remember just literally almost fainting. Like it had been the first time that I'd ever basically like admitted it to anybody, anyone, including myself probably. And then she gave me a book and then I started reading and I started learning about it. And then, on and on and on it went. And then years later, I ended up luckily getting like 3 years of professional counseling and doing a lot of reading and studying and learning about myself and, processing those traumatic events that I, buried. And she did EMDR on me, which is like, I think is amazing because it like detached the emotion from the trauma where now I can like think back and it's like I can say, yeah, okay, that happened to me. But before it's like my mind would just like lock onto that event and the emotion would start and I would like feel it like it just happened, right? But I don't have the capacity to do that. So I'm a like I'm a pretty like I'm an advocate of like EMDR. Like I don't know scientifically how it works, but it just in my case it worked. So uh, and then obviously my faith has been a big help. Uh, I believe that like um, for me, God is unconditional love, and I believe that people are conditional love. So I believe one of the causes of BPD is lack of unconditional love. So logically, it would make sense that if I could find unconditional love, I could probably like diminish the intensity of it. So there's that because it's objective. So it allows me not to like really rely so much on people for my like my approval and stuff, right? So I do that, and also about 7 or 8 years ago, I discovered that I could play music. Like basically I was in jail and I just one day I was just, man, am I ever bored, right? I had like a lot of spare time, right? And someone said, hey, why don't you try playing a musical instrument? And I was just like, yeah, that's a good idea. So I bought like this really like cheap Casio, keyboard, one of those ones that has like preloaded songs on it. And yeah, lo and behold, I got into it big time. And that was kind of like a saving grace for me because I find that like a lot of people that are creative that don't have an avenue for that, it's also like another thing that's bad for you, right? Like it's like I didn't have a channel to get all my emotions out, right? And through writing and music now, it's like because there's days where I'm not gonna lie, I'm still struggling like daily. It doesn't go away. I mean, I hate to break the news to people, but it's it's a lifelong journey, believe me. Right? And there's days where I just crush the piano, like I just kill it, like my fingers are just, like you're just, you're aggressive, right? And you put that into that instrument or wherever I'm playing, and it's an avenue, it's an outlet, and I feel better when I'm done. Um, or there's times when I feel like sensitive or I feel, whatever, and then I like to play like different kinds of songs, right? But so I do that, but also one of my biggest realizations that I came to the conclusion is that I mean this might sound weird. I mean, I know that people have different levels of functioning, and I'm not saying that I'm suffering any worse than anybody else, but I'm just telling you that in my case, I had to come to the conclusion and the responsibility and realize that this is my problem, right? Like the world carries on. And in order for me to survive, I need to understand what my limitations are and what my boundaries are. And what my boundaries are basically I just can't get involved with anybody. I know that might sound weird, but and I don't know because I make that mistake all the time, right? Like you meet somebody or just in general, you see the same person a few times, and then like the door just opens up again, and all of a sudden you're back in it again. And then one day they say something to you and it triggers you, and you're like, oh man, why did I do that? And so it's this constant battle to to kind of keep everyone at arm's length, but at the same time allow just like just have enough, right? Like I would rather meet a perfect stranger, to be honest with you, which is why I like going out in public and just randomly talking to people that I know I'm never going to see again, because it seems like it's like a Christmas present. Like everyone's on their best behavior when you first meet someone. Everything's great. Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, yeah, everything's awesome. Right? Then after a week, you're like, holy cow, I can't believe what this person just said to me, or I can't believe what they're doing. And I don't want to see that because I don't want that getting inside of me. So I'd rather just meet some Joe Blow on a bridge somewhere and be like, hey, it's a nice day out, right? And just have like some sort of banter to give me that feeling of connection with a human being, and then be like, see you later. And just know that I'm never going to see them ever again. And I'm quite good with that. So that's my life story, really.
Wow, it's very powerful, Shayne. Thank
Yeah.
you. I've heard bits and parts, but yeah, I mean, we've known each other for, I don't know, like maybe 3 years now or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And yeah, I've seen some of your growth, and I mean a lot of your growth really. And I appreciate you sharing your story with us today. It's quite powerful.
I guess I forgot to mention the BPD support group. Sorry,
we were in there
that
somewhere.
totally slipped my mind. That was pretty. No, that obviously. I mean, I was coming there. You know that I was coming there from prison on passes, right?
Yeah.
Like they knew that I had it, right? And there was actually a lady over on the mainland that was a counselor, and her and I got talking, and she said, "Oh, there's a support group in Victoria," which kind of like gave me the idea to come over here onto the island, right? And then when I was up island, and yeah, I started getting passes to Victoria. They were bringing me down there to that group, and it was amazing. Like, I mean, I'd never in my life ever met anybody like myself ever, you know. So you feel completely like, you know, you're insane, right? And everybody tells you that you are. So, and you start believing it because, I mean, you know, I got a bit of a pedigree, right, to back it up. And but then I come in there and it's just like, oh yeah, I freaking did this. And like I remember you telling me one time you kicked the windshield out of a car. I was like, yeah, like I mean, sorry, I mean, if that, I mean, to like blow your cover, but I mean, that to me, that's like, okay, these are my kind of people, right? Like they might have not have done what I've done, but they freak out too, right? I mean, this is where I belong, in this room right here with other people that can validate me, that can, because you know, you talk to other people, you know, about this, and they're just like, you know, thinking to themselves, you know, they're just doing this, right? Like, and then you get in a room where there's like 20 people and they're all nodding their head. It's just like there's just something about that feeling of validation from everybody that just, it just makes you feel like a human being again, right? And then yeah, I just started coming out on a regular basis. Like I was so scared to tell everybody. Like I remember telling your mom. I remember calling her down the hall, and it was hilarious because she didn't even know. I don't think. I think it was like the second time I went there, and I was like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, why?" And then she yelled back. She goes, "If I'm not back in 5 minutes, call the police." I never forget she said that. And it was so ironic that that was exactly what I was going to tell her, that I was coming out from prison. And she's like, "Oh, I don't care. You know, lots of people have done that before." And I was like, "Oh, sweet. You know, this is great because that takes the pressure off, right?" So yes, BPD support group.
Thanks, Shane. I mean, I think you answered most of the questions that I was going to ask anyways. Yeah. Uh, see if there's anyone that has any questions. We can put that out to the group. In the meantime, is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience that you have upcoming that you're working on?
Yeah, I just started a YouTube channel. It's more along like a Christian base, but it's basically just me doing little videos of you know, how I'm surviving, how I'm coping in the world, right? And that kind of stuff. I also, I don't know if any, I'm sure people have watched those Feeling Weird podcasts.
Mhm.
Feeling Weird, like without the G.com. And that guy Kai Plant actually went to this to your group actually once, and we actually sat next to each other. We didn't even know. I mean, obviously, I mean at the time we were just, and actually I was on a pass from prison, so it was weird. And then uh, so yeah, so basically, just to make a long story short, I ended up doing a podcast on his podcast, episode 60, specifically on BPD. But there's other ones too, right? There's not just me, and he has it too. So I think it's a good outlet to hear other people give their story, not just me. I mean, other people, including him, because he has it. But I just did another one, and it's being released this month. So this is like the third, or he's been following me on my journey. Like the first one when I was still in, the second one I got out, it was about a year out, and then the other one I did, I've been out for over 2 years. So
And
I
where
have
can
that
people
coming up.
find that?
It's like just like punch in feelingweird.com,
Okay,
like
great.
without a G. Feeling, like the cool way to say feeling, right?
Feeling.
Feeling weird. Yeah. So there's that, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I just play music. I'm just waiting for COVID-19 to end so I can get back out there, right?
Yeah.
Because it sucks right now. You can't do anything, right? I mean, I quit doing stand-up comedy, but that wasn't for that reason. That was just, I don't know, like
You used to
everything
come in
that
with
you.
lots of jokes to the group.
Yeah. I mean, like that's my audience. I mean, but the problem is when you have BPD, it's not like it's gonna just, you know, not affect you just because you go into something else. You're gonna run into problems with those people too. And I found out, the behind the scenes stuff that was going on in that little industry. And I was like, yep, I'm done with this. Right.
Mhm.
I don't need to, like I said, I don't need to go out there and, win the approval of people to tell some jokes. Right. I mean, I can do that all day if I want to anybody.
Yeah.
Right. I do that on my videos now, at least once per video. Or when I used to come to the group, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it's your outlet. But
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer of creativity. Like I'll preach that to the day I die. Like if you have BPD, I'm almost guarantee you that you have a creative avenue that either you haven't explored yet or you already know about it. So just keep doing it because it's a good way to express yourself, right?
Yeah, that was one of my questions actually. I mean, you keep hitting all my questions. I mean, and just naturally, like, what is one of the
Yeah.
gifts or positive traits do you see folks with BPD have? And you've mentioned a few of them. Creativity is one
Yeah.
of the big ones.
Yeah. Like creativity, big time. Like if you're a hypersensitive person, then you have the ability to read the atmosphere. You have the ability to basically you have felt thought, like you can feel other people's emotions and other people don't have that ability. So why not try to write something about, you know, an interaction or some sort of scenario, and people are going to be like, wow, that was amazing, how'd you do that? And you're like, I don't know, I just picked up a pen and started writing. Like
One day
it's
I
just
will
how
write a book
it's just how you
of my
think, right?
life.
Yeah, we got some good stories. I know you do, obviously, right?
Doran has a question. Hi, Shayne. Do you have any information on the number of people in prison who have or would qualify for the diagnosis of BPD?
uh I say a lot of people do, but like, they're all guys, so nobody talks about it, right? Because I always heard that it was a more of a female thing. I mean, and I just think it's just because guys don't talk about it. Like when I went to the group, like, it's hard because there's only like, maybe three guys and it's all girls. And I'm probably a trigger for them because, a lot of guys have mistreated them. So they're looking at me like, you're one of the problems, right? So I can feel that vibe in the room. It's intense, right? But another thing I wanted to say, just reminded me, was when I was in jail, I did take the DBT, training with a counselor. And yeah, so, but I think that like just becoming self-aware, and for me, getting to a place of not compromising, until when you get to that place, that's when you really start to make some really good gains. Like, what your limitations are, what your boundaries are. So quit stepping outside of them, because every time you do, guess what happens? The same exact thing that happened the last time, right? And then you're like, why did I do that? And then you just keep going through the cycle. But when you get to a place where you're just like, I'm not doing that anymore. And yeah, it sucks sometimes. It gets lonely, but what's worse, that or, whatever else people are going through, right?
Yeah. Well, my mom is posted, or the BPD Society has posted the link if anyone's interested to feelingweird.com
Oh,
with the one that you did, number 60, BPD
I
Life in
think
Prison.
I think 71 also. But like I said, there's a third one coming out too. So,
All right. Well, we'll watch out for those ones.
well,
Um,
it's a more in depth. It's like those things are like 2.5 hours of just blabbing,
if you
right?
want to know more about what it's like to have BPD in prison, then check those out.
Well, not even in prison. Just, I mean, human interactions are human interactions, right? It's
Yeah.
just more
Well,
the
I just
concept.
was going off the title.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
Says
Okay,
BPD
sorry.
Life in Prison.
Oh, is that what it says? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually in prison. I was in my parole officer's office on the telephone doing that
Oh,
interview. So,
wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was kind of
Well, I
cool.
can imagine
Well,
it'd be really isolating. I mean, like, and then I think of like, I kind of feel like I'm in my own kind of type of prison, with COVID right now. Like, so I
yeah.
can't even imagine what it would be like being in an actual prison. I mean, I kind of can, but
See
yeah,
what?
briefly.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, exactly. And my
isolating.
thing is
And
like
yeah.
my life changed. Like the only thing that I changed when COVID-19 hit was I stopped going to the gym. Everything else is exactly the same. So, obviously I'm a little bit antisocial, right? Like I don't even care. It's the same exact life because that's how I set myself up to succeed. Like, I know everyone is different. I know you're obviously different. You're more involved with people, but I know my limitations, and I know that if the more people I get involved with, there's going to be problems, right? So I just
Well,
don't
I
do
mean,
it.
it's so dysregulating, like,
Yeah,
especially with having BPD, you know, and the difficulties with interpersonal relationships. Like,
yeah,
I totally do get it, having to
yeah.
be.
Like, I only work part-time, and you know, I'm not going to make the same mistake again, right? Because it's going to happen. If I do this and this happens. If I
Right.
do this and this, guess what's going to happen again? Because it's already happened before. So I
Yeah.
got to change something down here. Otherwise, that's going to be the result. And you know, I've had to fight, like, literally against, uh, my case management team. Like, they're trying to push me to do things, and I'm like, I'm not compromising. Like, I'm putting my foot down. I'm saying, listen, I'd rather do this than be in jail. So you guys can say whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. I believe. I'm not trying to give anyone advice, right? I still know the rules. I'm just saying, for me, that's what I had to do. I had to get to a place where I was unwilling to compromise. And that's when I
Yeah.
started getting victory in my life.
You know your own, like, nervous system and what your body needs for your
Yeah.
own. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And you know, stop doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. What's that called? Yeah.
Uh, the definition of insanity.
There you go. There you go.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, on that note, is there any last word? I mean, that's a good place to finish. But
Yeah.
is there any last
Yeah.
words? Anything we missed that you wanted to speak about that
No.
we didn't get to a chance to?
No, you know what, honestly, I think to myself, like, if I could go back, 30 years and relive the last 30 years of my life, I would educate myself, and I would learn as much as I possibly could about myself and how I react in interpersonal relationships. And like I said, just make the changes that are necessary so I don't keep repeating the same behavior over and over again and only hurting myself and other people in the long run, but specifically myself, right? Yeah.
Okay. Well,
All right.
thanks, Shane. I appreciate your time and
All right.
telling your story. I'm sure that it can help a lot of other people. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.